Dragon Ball Super Superhero Review. Dragon Ball Super Superhero, and yes, I'm aware the word superhero exists, it's just the way the title is written, was released in Japan back in June. During it was scheduled to go at the end of April, the now infamous Toei Animation ransomware attack setting it back 2 months. Once again, Dragon Ball creator Akira Toriyama was heavily involved with the film, writing the rough storyboard, outline and designing all the characters and new transformations, and boy, those are something. The plot revolves around the core idea of relieving the android Cell arc, much like how Resurrection F focused on the Frieza arc 2 films ago. This means not only the introduction of Dr. Gero's grandson, Dr. Hedo, and a brief look at the Gero family tree, which confirmed both that Android 21 from the recently released video games was indeed based on Gero's wife, and that Android 16 was based on Gero's son, who had died as a Red Ribbon Army soldier, a backstory written for number 16 but never actually used back in the day. But he's recruited by the son of Commander Red, Magenta, who had been secretly recruiting his father's Red Ribbon Army all this time, so there are quite a few callbacks to the original Dragon Ball series as well as the Cell arc, which is refreshing. Andro, the focus of most of the film is on Gohan and Piccolo, making the former of a central character, obviously being another callback to the popular DBZ arc. Goku, Vegeta, and Broly all appear in an unrelated big bookend story on Whis planet, so they're not entirely absent from the film. Dr. Hedo creates two androids to go after our heroes in Gamma 1 and 2, who were based on superheroes he watched as a child, complete with real projectors that shows onomatopoeia behind it when they do certain attacks, so it becomes quite clear that Magenta is far more of evil than Hedo is, not that the latter is a saint by any stretch. If you've seen certain trailers already put two and two together about there being two androids, a new Dr. Gero-like lab, and Gohan as a central part of goddess, it would surprise you to know there is another returning element, that it doesn't take the form you imagine a kind of leads to a flat finale. How about the new Thingstone? Well, superhero set a few years after his predecessor, Broly, to the point where not only as Pan, not a walking, talking toddler character like she was in the final DBZ arc, but Goten and Trunks are actually teenagers at last. Going quoting Toriyama himself when asked by Piccolo how come the sounded growing saying, "Science stay young from ages and shoot up like a rocket." Sure, why not? That sort of happened with Goku in the original series, I guess. We see Piccolo is now acting as Pan's favorite uncle and is actually training her to fight behind Gohan and Fidel's back. But this is where the story side of things falls flat for me, as Piccolo is soon making some really out of character decisions in relating to this sudden extreme frustration at Gohan's choice not to train and focus on academics. I will go into the too much detail, but it did stick out like a sore thumb. Speaking of sticking out like a sore thumb, let's address the elephant in the room, the animation style. No matter how you slice it, seeing a nearly all CG film after the frankly perfect blend to traditional 2D with some CG assistance we saw in DBS Broly was deflating. I will say that once superhero gets involved moving, the action animation is extremely fluid and very fun. And the actual models of characters is very Toriyama, his style. Still, and thankfully they don't fall into the CG pitfall of trying to make characters move all the time. As if standing still is somewhat unnatural, it's more scenes with cars and buildings where things look off and out of place, plus the odd panning shot where people's head just breaking the immersion a bit but not quite looking right. It's probably the best CG anime I have seen enough, far superior to anything else, and frankly for the final 50 odd minutes, I didn't even notice given how action heavy it is. After a real, inspiring first trailer, I am at least relieved that overall it was a good visual experience, even if you have much prefer another effort like Broly a few years ago. Sound-wise, the film is good. The background score was composed by industry veteran but Dragon Ball newcomer Naoki Sato and works well, given the more heroic and comic book inspired nature of the film. Workswork is up to the usual standard for both languages. If you listen to the English language voice track, you get to hear Charles, Super Mario Martinet, as Magenta, which is frankly bizarre to find out about just now. So, should you pop down to the cinema to see Dragon Ball Superhero? Well, if you're a Dragon Ball fan already, then sure, absolutely there's some great callbacks, fights, and a few new transformations to look forward to playing as in future video games. Plus a post-credit scene featuring Goku and Vegeta that if you're a long-time fan, you have to see to believe. If you're not a fan, then at least, very least, the plot is very self-contained and each of the central characters, both old and new, are well introduced so you won't actually be lost, but really the plot is thin, which for Dragon Ball isn't exactly new ground, to be fair. The animation isn't so good, it's worth seeing just for like the previous cinematic Dragon Ball effort. Overall, it's a strong effort and surpassed several things that I thought would hold it back more. But the final fight doesn't have the same energy and excitement as a previous cinematic outing. A fine 90 minutes in the cinema as long as you're a fan of the series. You can book tickets now at the film's official website. 7 out of 10.